Hello and welcome to Access Chat. I'm delighted that we're joined today by Lee-Anne Reuber, who is the founder and CEO of Second Skin Society. Lee-Anne, we have chatted before, but for the benefit of our audience, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what Second Skin Society is?
Yes, thank you for having me. So, I am the founder and CEO of Second Skin Society, and it is a fitness community where we are bringing people with and without disabilities together through movement. So, we've launched an app that has been really intentionally designed for accessibility and really thoughtfully, put together to include as many people as we possibly can. Of course, there's so much room for continued involvement, but super excited to be here today and share a little bit more about it.
Excellent, and we're glad to have you here. So what first prompted you to go down this route and set up your own organization? Were there particular things that motivated you? Did you see that there was a hole in the market?
Yeah, definitely. So, my experience with disability inclusion actually started when I was 13 years old. I had a really incredible opportunity to support one individual specifically in a very social aspect, but it ended up turning into a 22-year career, the bulk of which I was spending developing and managing employment support programs and also developing and managing rec and therapeutic programs. I took a little bit of a left turn at that point in my own life, my personal life. I had become a new yoga teacher and I was kind of presented this opportunity to open a yoga studio. So I decided, okay, I'm young enough to do this. I'm going to try it out. I opened a yoga studio. I ran it for a year and then the pandemic came. I immediately started creating virtual content and was really working on developing a membership in the virtual space and came to realize that the feedback that we were getting from members over and over was that they loved that we had both standing and seated class options. And for me, when we were getting this feedback, I was like, okay, we could do so much better. We could really, really lean into accessibility and thinking very intentionally in how we were designing and building something to include as many people as possible. And not just to include people with disabilities, but truly to create a space where people with and without disabilities are coming together. And we're focusing on all the things that we have in common, like love for fitness, love for yoga. So it started there, but also as I started to have many, many conversations, hundreds of conversations with people in my network who had disabilities and were sharing about their access needs and also the barriers that they had come up against with respect to movement. I myself was recognizing I was starting to lose some of my hearing. So, some of the features that we've integrated into the app include the ability to adjust the volume of the instructor separate from volume of the music. That is a personal need for me to have a better user experience so that I know that I can hear the instructor very clearly. And so, the intention and the design and what we've started with and where we expect to go is both for all of the people who have access needs today, but also for the future me that I know is going to continue to need more and more different options and customizations based on my body's needs as it continues to change as well.
And this is something that's quite close to home for me as well, because my father has very much reduced mobility and hearing, and a whole host of other things that he's acquired over the years with, and he still needs to exercise and get out of the chair,
Yeah.
and or at least exercise sometimes from the chair.
Yep.
But I think that quite often what happens is that people will acquire an injury or acquire a disability, and not only does it have an impact on the immediacy of that particular condition, but then it impacts on the things that they used to do in terms of the sports, and then that then creates a sort of relatively rapid downward spiral in terms of fitness and health, because if
Yeah.
you lose your fitness, then it starts to have other amplification impacts on people's health. So I know this is something that we within my own family we have people that are coming and supporting doing these adaptive exercises. So how are but that's in person and it's expensive, and to reach a mass market you need to think about scale. So how are you scaling? How?
Yeah, so we built it as a mobile app. So because that was one of the asks that we were hearing from people that we were speaking to. Also because it creates the opportunity to scale globally. Anyone can access our app. We currently have members in Canada, in the US, the UK, Australia, India, Italy. So, anyone can access the app. That makes it, the scalability is there, but also the convenience is there for in-person opportunities or even virtual opportunities that are live. For many of the people that we want to create impact with and for, you might decide that, hey, 6 p.m. on a Monday is when I'm going to take this class, but at 5 p.m. on Monday, your body says, no, it's not today. I don't have that capacity today. And so the convenience of having availability on demand when your body has the capacity to show up, for us, that was a real consideration as well. Also, because our instructor community is 75% made up of people with lived experience with disabilities. So we have instructors who are blind, who are deaf, who use wheelchairs, who are autistic, who have ADHD, and also instructors who are non-disabled. We're all working together to co-create different class options to reach a broad range of needs and preferences. And so, in thinking about how we're creating content and protecting the capacity of our instructor community as well, we also knew that having this on-demand option was both for benefit of our members and also for benefit of our instructors who may benefit from flexibility in being able to create and deliver the content.
Leanne, thank you so much for being on the show. I know that I've been tracking your work for many years, and it's very exciting because, as we'd said before we came on air, others have tried to do this, and we've actually featured some people, trying to do things like this. But it does feel to me like the times have changed. I'm a woman over a certain age now, and a lot of people are aging, and I know a lot of the population in the United States, for example, are over 65. But these people
Mm.
are still, a lot of us are still healthy and fit and want to remain healthy and fit.
Yeah,
So another thing that I'm seeing is that it appears to me, especially in my peers, people are looking at health in different ways now. They're like, how can I have a better mind body connection? How can I be
yeah,
more focused on healthy eating? I had heard something, even something silly like a lot as you get into your later years, a lot of people cannot raise their hands over their head,
yeah,
all the way over their head, because you sort of stop doing that. You sort of stop doing the movements that your body actually still needs. And so,
yeah,
just based on some of the walk I'm taking and watching my friends, the walks they're taking, it feels like what you're doing is more important than ever because you're allowing the human inclusion. You're allowing us to join no matter where we are experiencing that humanness. And I think that we keep forgetting to do that. And I find that extremely distracting, but also as somebody that has always exercised, always done, I love group exercises, yoga and Zumba and things like that. But I get more out of the class when I'm given more information. Like you said, if there are people up there signing, that would add enjoyment to me in the class. I was just wondering if,
yeah.
if you're seeing other people looking at it almost a little differently now than in the past, because
Yes.
I think what you're doing is just so important right now to society.
Thank you. I definitely am seeing and hearing from a lot of people who have shifted their thinking about movement just recently. So, one of our newest members, we've been working together. She has cerebral palsy, and we've been talking about different exercises that she is really working on and goals that she has, and how we can integrate different types of movement that are really going to meet her exactly where she's at. And that's kind of the point. The thinking is we're used to the fitness industry or the yoga industry being established as a very, kind of this is the box that it fits within. And then we as individuals have to fit within that box. And especially when it comes to people with disabilities, they're not going to fit into that box. And so we are flipping it. We want to create the experience where we're meeting you where you are instead of asking you to change. And so there's a lot of aspects to it. Speaking about this specific individual who we've been working on different exercises, we were talking about, doing tricep extensions and tricep dips to build the muscles on her arms so that she can push herself up out of her wheelchair and transfer more easily. That mentality is so much different than the way that the fitness industry has taught us to exercise because we hate our bodies, exercise because we want a six pack, exercise because we want our bodies to be, fitting the mold of what's valued by society. And instead, our mentality is very much, as an instructor team, we talk about if the fitness industry or the yoga industry or the dance industry didn't exist, how would we want to create it for ourselves? And because we have so many diverse perspectives that are included in that conversation, it's one of the coolest aspects of the way that we get to work. We get to kind of cast aside that feeling of we hate ourselves and so we exercise. And instead, we exercise because we value our bodies. We respect our bodies. We appreciate our bodies. We don't need to be focused on a certain aesthetic or a certain look. We need to be focused on, we do squats so we can pick up our kids. We do bicep curls so we can carry groceries more easily. We want to keep mobility. We want to keep strength. We want to really appreciate the vessels that we have, regardless of what they can and cannot do. We want to love and appreciate them. And so we move our bodies as a way to respect our bodies instead of, the way that the kind of entire health, beauty, wellness industry has been established. We're rejecting that way of thinking or the reason behind why we should move our bodies.
I'm interested to understand, how do you foster a sense of community amongst your users, and why is that important for you?
Yeah. So there are many things that we have kind of coming up on our roadmap that are intended to continue to bring our community together. Right now, because it's our first version, we're really focused on making sure that the concept has been well received and that we're moving in the right direction. And so right now, the way in which we're really fostering community is truly through many, many, many conversations, small group, one-on-one, everyone invited into a call, into a conversation with myself, with my team members, so that we can connect with each other and truly learn about each other and learn from each other. And we've started this internally with our own team. So my team, in the way that we've established, with the way we built the team, has really been about focusing on, yes, filling the gaps that we have so that we can do the things that we want to do with a specific skill set, but also understanding who we're bringing into the team and why it's important for them to be here, whether that's they have their own lived experience with disability, they have family members with disabilities. There's a personal connection kind of to the mission itself. And so we've started this sense of community internally first. And it's reflected in our instructor community, of course. I mentioned, the different people that are included in our instructor teams, and we're still continuing to bring other people in who can bring more diverse perspectives in. To me, that's the most important piece, is ensuring that internally we've built and developed our own community and we've created a safe space for people to really show up and express themselves fully. And I expect, and we're starting to see that and hear that feedback, that we'll see that in our membership community reflected because we've started that community aspect internally first. So on the roadmap, as far as, more community integration, is an entire community forum where members can connect with each other, members can connect to myself and our team, and we can continue to learn about and from each other. And again, this underlying intention of really bringing people together to focus on all the things that we have in common. I'm excited about that space that will hopefully really flourish, and we can shed assumptions through those connections and through those conversations. To me, it is such a powerful experience where non-disabled people are, so it just very specifically, a non-disabled person taking a fitness class that's taught by somebody with a visible disability or invisible disability, and they're aware that this person has expressed their disability throughout their teaching, there's an assumption that can change in that moment where that non-disabled person can think, hey, I never expected that I would take a yoga class taught by somebody with a disability, and what other assumptions might I be holding about disability that need to be questioned and potentially or probably changed. So those are the things that I'm excited to dig into when we get to more of those community pieces. Lots more on the way.
You mentioned about learning together. Traditionally, personal coaches and trainers are somehow on one side, and on the other side, we have physiotherapy and nurses. How you somehow bring the two together? Because I'm sure some of them have that deep techno knowledge in a kind of a medical approach. The others bring a different type of energy, sometimes more fun into the table. How you make the most out of these two while creating a foster an element of trust, so that the students and the people who go into the class, they feel safe. Yes, I can do this. This is safe for me to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So one of the things that I often think about and kind of compare it to is that we all have our own responsibility when we're engaging in any type of physical activity. So if you were to take a Peloton class, you are responsible for, following the instructions and also knowing your own body awareness of what doesn't feel good and when you should stop that movement. So there is an aspect of personal responsibility, but all of our instructors are certified. Some also do have that medical background, but we really do focus on this certification, the instructor, that fun element, because again, a lot of the feedback that I was getting when I was first developing the idea was that people were used to the medical model and they hated it. They didn't want to just show up and do these 3 exercises. It's so boring. It's so monotonous. And where other people do have access to Apple and Peloton and other, those types of more fun, engaging, motivating, type of opportunities, that's what people were really looking for. So we really do focus on the group fitness style of teaching classes and, offering full body standing class versions, seated class versions that do include some lower body movement, seated class versions that don't include any lower body movement. These are kind of, the different ways that we're creating opportunities to really meet people where they're at. And also, trusting that they're going to listen to their bodies and know when they need to stop. And hopefully the goal is that they're also going to communicate those things with us so that we as an instructor community can continue to learn from our members as well.
Leanne, when you were talking about knowing your body, something I was doing before the pandemic, I love Zumba. I love to dance. And I found that I was going to my 3 or 4 classes a week in person, but I kept hurting myself. I kept hurting my legs. And my instructors were like scolding me, even when there would be this one dance that I could do, but I shouldn't. My instructor would say, "Deborah, don't try it." But it's funny trying to learn to what's important to you, Deborah, walking first. Anyway, I had to learn that during it being taken away from me at COVID. But I wanted to sort of go in a different direction. I love everything you're talking about. And you've talked about this already a little bit. But one thing that I've heard from different people that have disabilities, but it's not just for people with disabilities, but it's so important also. You gave the wonderful examples of how we can learn from an instructor that's different from us. Oh, wow, look at me learning here. But at the same time, it's so important to have somebody that has lived experiences similar to yours at the same time. Could I, as a person with cerebral palsy or let me do this one. Down syndrome. Can I, as a person with Down syndrome, get up there and teach the Zumba classes? Could I be? Well, yes, actually, you could. We know there's a Zumba instructor in Latin America. That's amazing. I totally want to take one of her classes. I'm sure there's more than one. But why is the lived experiences of the instructor? What value do the lived experiences the instructors have add to the class and the participants?
Oh,
I know it's a big one, but I know you're on this too. So
yeah, it's so much value. It's hard for me to articulate because there's so much value in it. Obviously, because they can really teach to specific needs, having those needs themselves. Really, many people, and especially people with disabilities are consistently used to adapting to the world that's not accessible. And so in movement, it's the same. They're consistently used to adapting to fit into whatever the instructor is teaching. And exactly as I mentioned before, we want to create a space where you're not having to adapt to us, but we are really thinking thoughtfully about meeting you where you are. And so having that lived experience in our instructor community allows for that to happen much more easily. There is also just, so much that people with disabilities have been told about movement. And there's a lot of rhetoric around, needing to be protected and being fragile and maybe not exercising because you could hurt yourself. There's a lot of that, mentality that still exists as well. And so by having that representation, it's also helping to eliminate some of those thoughts that really don't need to exist. And just speaking on this, I mean, for me, I think when we started thinking about how do we really want to create the most impact, it's obviously through access, but it is also through that representation. That piece is so, so important. People with disabilities have been excluded from this entire industry for so long. And that sends such a message to our society. When you think about the fitness industry, the wellness industry, the beauty industry, there is such an emphasis on the value that is placed on bodies. So if you're then actively excluding people with disabilities, what does that say about how people with disabilities are valued? So ensuring that there is access and not just access, but leadership is so, so important. And so part of what we're working on next, and this is very, very early stage, but I'll give you some inside information. We also want to create an accessible fitness certification process and an accessible yoga certification process. So more people with disabilities can go through that certification process and have a much easier, supportive, and representative experience to become certified rather than being faced with more and more barriers. When, I hope that when more and more people get to experience what we've created, they start to think, hey, maybe I see myself as a yoga teacher. Maybe I see myself as a fitness instructor. Maybe this is a career for me that I didn't even recognize was on the table. And now that I can recognize that it is, how can I go through that process? Well, we want to support people to go through that process. And obviously, would love to welcome more people onto our team, but also would love to support people in establishing a career in which they've been excluded for decades and decades.
I think that's excellent. I think that also you're changing you're changing the image of the instructors as well, because often I think that when we think about disability sport, when people do think about it, they think about the Paralympics, and that's elite sport.
Yep.
And Paralympians actually are quite often, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, quite detached from the rest of the disability community, in terms of their attitudes to physicality and elitism. It's elite sport, even if it is disability sport. And so it's not necessarily inclusive sport. We did have Sophia Warner on, who is an Paralympian and has created something that's fully inclusive mass participation event. But that was born out of the same realization, was that actually a lot of the time these things were exclusive rather than inclusive. So I think it's really important that you're creating the ability for people to become role models that aren't elite athletes, and that has a much more positive impact on people's health, because I think even if you were taking the Paralympians, and that has been the case before on some of these attempts for fitness acts, is actually these people are too fit, frankly. Right, they're too good, and so they become it becomes intimidating. So you're creating a psychological barrier to participation because the people are at a different level of physicality.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you're sort of democratizing this.
Yeah, there needs to be room for everybody, right? There needs to be room for the people that do want to really focus on, challenging themselves, bodybuilding, if that's your thing. If that's, if you want to work towards becoming an elite athlete, wonderful. If you want to just show up and move your body in a way that feels really fun, where it feels easy for you to do so to help maintain your mobility, to build strength, whatever it is that your own personal goal is. You need the space to do that too. It doesn't have to be that it's so rigid, on the elite athlete side of things. It doesn't have to be that it is so boring in the medical model type of things. There should be things that are in between that are really just focused on, a space for fun and a space for anyone to be included.
Here. I don't think we should be just concentrating on rehab.
Right.
For the stuff that I'm doing, I'm thinking it's prehab, right? So,
Yeah.
as preventative fitness, I'm 52, so I'm some 30 years older than Deborah, right? And I'm really caring about my long-term mobility, and so I know that I'm not going to be some kind of elite athlete anymore anytime soon. Going to be regaining a six-pack, or maybe ever. But I do exercise. I do strength training, and it's really thinking about, having seen what's happened with my own close family, not wanting that to happen to me.
Yeah.
Right, not wanting to lose my mobility because I haven't maintained it and haven't maintained my strength.
Yep. Yep. It's like everything else. If you can be aware and make small, dedicated commitments, instead of having this all or nothing mentality where I have to work out 60 minutes, 6 days a week, it's got to be high intensity, it's got to be really pushing myself, all of those things. If you can start wherever you are right now and just decide to have the consistency of, I'm going to do something, I'm going to commit to something in small habits, in very, specific increments, and then just stick with that compounding effect for your mobility, for your strength, for your balance, all of those different things that you will really rely on when you get older. It will just be part of your body. Your body will be used to those things, which is so important.
I mean, I think most of us have got some kind of smartwatch on, and we are tracking and we are quantifying ourselves and all the rest of it. And I maybe have been doing the 6 days a week high intensity, but I don't have to. But that's partly because I enjoy it. But the intent's not to be lining up at the athletic championships.
Yeah.
It's pushing against my own personal goals and enjoying it and feeling healthy as a result of that. So I think that we really need to applaud the work you're doing to try and make that available to more people. Surprisingly, we're at the end of our allotted half hour already, so it just really remains for me to thank those that support us. So Amazon and MyClearText for helping keep us on air, keep us captioned, and thank you, Leanne, for being our guest and for supporting our community.
Thank
It's been
you.
great to have you on.
And also,
Wonderful.
Leanne, before we leave, can you let the audience know how to find your program, your website, your app name? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure we got that in before we got off.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Yes. Check out our website. It is www.secondskinsociety.com. Second is spelled with a K, S-E-K. And you can find us in both the Apple Store and the Google Store looking at Second Skin Society. Would love to welcome any new members.
Highly recommend it.